you.
Okay. Mint. Great minds. Good morning.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good.
I was thinking we could read it in both spots. Yeah. No.
High bush.
What is that? Yeah.
No.
The high bush doesn't grow on, do they grow around here? I thought you local.
But he's got some.
So I buy them in pots anyway.
They like it better in pots. I can see the control.
Well, maintain your seed in your soil.
Right.
You don't get as many blueberries as you would if it's in the ground.
This year was good.
Okay, good morning.
Good
Yeah,
morning.
well,
My name is Gary Matsuoka, and this is the Winnie Hills Nursery in Santa Ana, and thanks for joining us. So today we're going to be talking about berry plants, and certainly blueberries have come to the forefront of almost everything we sell. So we'll start with those since we have a good selection at this time. So the blueberries that we sell are native to well, actually blueberries are native throughout the northern hemisphere, and Europe they call them something different, although it translates to blueberry. And here the blueberries are native from Alaska all the way down to the tip of Florida on the east side of the Rockies. Of course, there is an interesting blueberry that we're trying to get from Hawaii too, but it's high altitude, I don't know if it'll grow here. But blueberries, there's apparently about 5 or 6 different species. The ones that we tend to grow are called the southern high bush. There's a northern high bush, and a lot of people who are native to the northern parts of North America know the northern low bush blueberries, which grow about knee height, just cover the ground there. But the southern high bush would be these, and they'll grow 5 foot, 6 foot by the same width, and produce a good number of berries. So blueberries, southern high bush. Now, another blueberry that's often promoted is called the rabbit eye. We do the southern high bush. I don't know if there is a southern low bush, but high bush. I'll put the rabbit eye, I'll mention the rabbit eyes because they're pushed for this area sometimes, but generally we don't do too much with rabbit eyes because most rabbit eyes, if you don't have a pollinator, that is a different type of rabbit eye nearby, no fruit at all. It's like 1 or 2 berries per plant per year without a pollinator, so they don't work too well. And we've tried to carry rabbit eyes in the past because they're considered very good tasting. They call them rabbit eyes because they're kind of a rosy pink color of a rabbit's eye. So we've tried to carry them, and I'd order, there's not many that are suited for this. There's suppliers that have like 2 varieties that can produce out here. So I'd order them like 40 or 50 of 2 types. And every year for like 3 years we got one of the 2. It's like, okay, I cannot sell just one. It doesn't work. So after 3 or 4 frustrating years of trying to get 2 rabbit eye blueberries in the store at the same time, we gave up. So we stick with the southern high bush. Southern high bush is considered to be self-fertile. It's not totally, but it is self-fertile in that it'll make what the research papers we just saw were they'll make the normal number of blueberries without a pollinator. But if you have a pollinator that is a different type of southern high bush that blooms at the same time, the berries will have more seeds, and as a result they become bigger, and sometimes substantially bigger. So on blueberry plants, there is quite a range of berry sizes on them, from, you know, smaller than a pea to about the size of a quarter. And we'll see that on the same plant. So we know the small ones, you know, didn't get cross-pollinated. The big ones probably did. So it does help to have the pollen, and bees do it. We've seen hummingbirds in the flowers. Hummingbirds can probably do it too. So it's nice to have more than one variety out there, or one cultivar in your garden. Now the thing about blueberries, the most important thing to know, they do not handle drought well at all. If you let your blueberry plants go really dry one time, it's probably better just to throw it away. It takes them a long time to recover from drought stress. So a lot of plants, like a rose bush, you let it go dry, the leaves turn yellow, a lot of them will fall off. Give them back the water, and it seems like they just resume where they ended up. With blueberry plants, it seems like they die back. It takes them about a year to get back to where you were before you let it get dry, or longer. So it may not be worth the effort once they dry up. So that's more important. Make sure they kept moist. The other thing about them is that they don't like, well, they need a low pH soil. Yes.
When you say keep them moist, water every other day, once, a little bit every day?
Every day safer. You can go even more than that if you want to. Now, in farming, they found out several generations ago it is most efficient to water more frequently. You use less water if if you're watering, say, 7 gallons a week on one plant. It's more efficient to the plant to water 1 gallon every day than it is to water 7 gallons in one day. So most farms water once a day. There's some farms that said they water 18 times a day and save a lot on their water bill. So they just try to maintain a certain soil moisture at all times. Now most people just water once a day because you're not home. I intend to do it more than that. Or now if you have timers, because at my last house I had quite an elaborate setup. I'd water 3 times a day, everything 3 times a day, lightly, very lightly. And I don't know that we use any more water than we watered once a day. So okay, they also like the pH to be fairly low. We don't know the exact ranges, and different blueberries have different tolerances, but in general, we grow them in an acid medium. So if you buy blueberries, generally you buy our acid mixed potting soil. Now our other soil called top pot generally is also acidic, not quite as much peat moss as this, so this can buffer a little better. That is, it can keep the pH down a little better than our other one because it's got more peat in it. This is half peat moss and half volcanic rock. There are other acid potting soils out there, but we don't promote those. So when I was growing up, my dad used to plant azaleas, which are related to blueberries, and they also needed a low pH, high acidic soil. So he used to put in well, I don't know if the company's still around, Baianini azalea mix when he planted his azaleas, and they'd look great for about 5 years, then they'd go downhill, and then at the 7th year he'd have to replant them. Fresh planter mix. And the reason he had to do that, because azalea should be able to live forever, at least a couple generations, is that the Baianini azalea mix was peat moss and fir bark. And fir bark just doesn't last that long. As far as the roots need both water and air to breathe. And if you lose your structure so that the air can't get in there anymore, because peat is just like a bog, the air can't get through it. So we use volcanic rock to let our soil breathe. Most other acid mixes use ground up bark. And because of that, most of the other soils out there, your plants will do well. Now, I don't even know if the bark is as good as it used to be. So we see a lot of them failing within 3 or 4 years. They just stop growing, turn yellow, shrivel up, and that's due to no more roots. Now with our soil, we've seen the blueberries go at least 10 years. I have not grown them longer than that in a single spot, so I don't know if it'll last longer than that. Yes.
So would you recommend like that new one, having it in a pot? Is it control?
Good question. So pot or the ground? They'll grow both ways. In the ground, you have to put more soil in there initially to make it acidic. Just because the ground up here is alkaline, so it influences the acid mix a little more. A pot is isolated, so you can get away with a smaller pot than you can in the ground. In the ground, we find that one bag doesn't do it. You put one bag of the soil in the ground around your blueberry and it just sits there. The soil is too alkaline around that acid mix. If you put 3 bags in, it grows. If you do about 4 or 5, it'll grow full size. Now blueberry will grow full size in this with about, takes a little less than 3 bags of our soil. This is a 24-gallon pot, at least that's what it says. So you probably use about 20 gallons of soil, maybe 22 gallons of soil in here. And a cubic foot of dirt is 7.5 gallons. So 3 bags will do it fairly easily. Yeah, in fact, most people use a little smaller pot, and it's a 15 gallon, which is the number 15 pots are actually about 13 gallons or less. And keep them about 4 by 4, and they do a good job. But a friend of mine, and we had it here last year, was growing his in a half barrel, 25-gallon bucket. The plant was like at least this wide, at least. And pot and all, it was about like this. That was a big blueberry plant. And he said it was 10 years old. So we sold it, but we hated to sell it because I think he said there's like about 12, 15 pounds of blueberries in its fruit. So a good sized blueberry will make that much, well over 10 pounds of berries.
You said that was a wine barrel?
Half barrel, yeah. So slightly bigger than this. I mean, it's 28 inches across versus this is 24 inches across. Right, you trim it though. I mean, the main thing you don't want to happen is let the plant dry out. The more foliage you have and the smaller the pot, the faster they dry up. So if you keep them trimmed, like most of the blueberries we have right now, and we got these a few months ago when they were this tall. You can see they're growing. So this pot is going to be too small pretty quick. This is 1 year later. They're getting too big for a 5 gallon. So if you wanted to, you can put them into a 5 gallon for the first year, and then they'll outgrow it by the next summer. And then, I mean, there's no reason we couldn't go to full size immediately. Our potting soil does not kill plants if you put too much around it. Like most potting soils, you use too much potting soil once the plant just rots away. They don't make it right.
So is this the southern pine bush?
These are all southern pine bush. For pollination purposes, the closer together, the better. Because as far as bees are concerned, they don't like to travel much more than a few feet between flowers. So it's better to have them fairly close together. We've planted 2 or 3 in one pot before. They'll grow as big as one plant, and that's fine. Plants really don't know that the next branch over isn't part of themselves. They have no clue. So you can put 1 plant in here, 2 plants in here, 3 plants in here, even 4 or 5 plants in here. The danger would be that some might outgrow the others and smother them, shade-wise, but they can coexist. Just prune them so that they don't block each other's light.
Do you prune them in the fall?
You can prune them any time of the year now. The main thing we do is blueberries. So blueberries, the way they grow, if you've grown climbing roses before, they're very similar. So they'll start off with these branches, and they shoot up these straight canes. Now this plant's only capable of making a cane maybe a foot long at the moment. And a year older, these are sending up canes that are about 2, and they might later this summer go to 3 or 4 foot long. And then this is an older plant here, and it's capable of sending up canes, you know, probably 5 foot long. So they'll shoot up the cane, just straight cane, straight up. And then the next year, it'll bloom and branch out. And blueberries, actually the second spring, like this is the first spring for this plant. The second spring, they're real impressed because these branches are just strings of blueberries. Wherever there's a leaf this year, there'll be a cluster of blueberries next year. So it looks like these long streamers of blueberries on the plant. Their second year, you know, the branch on its second year is very, very impressive. And then on the third year, the branches branch out sideways more and more. But the blueberries are now on shorter. So you can see this branch, blueberries will form here next year. And then the following year, they'll form on shorter branches off of those. And within about 5 years or so, the branches get shorter and shorter, and then you start getting some dieback on them. Then like this branch is pretty old now, just cut it out to make room for new ones coming out of the base.
Do they like full sun?
They're all from real bright areas, yeah. They like full sun. I mean, when I first started growing blueberries in the 1980s, I thought, boy, these things must be from, you know, Michigan or that area, so they must not like the heat. So I put them underneath my patio cover where it was like 3 or 4 hours of sun a day. They still made berries that tasted good. So blueberries, the one good thing about them is the berry will hang on till it is sweet. Whereas you go with the blackberry, it falls off when it's ripe. You got no chance. So with blackberries, raspberries, we have to have those in full sun at least 2/3 of the day, or else they never get sweet. Blueberries, if they are stuck in a shady area, the berries usually eventually ripen, although I'm sure they're heavy producers in full sun. But it doesn't stop them from getting sweet.
How do they do against a block wall? Is that too hot for them?
We haven't seen them burn.
Okay.
They'll just use more water, that's the
Okay.
disadvantage. I mean, if you're from the varieties we sell are all from Florida. So Florida heat, no problem. It's hot there.
When you say trimming in 2 ways, one is you say trim this big one, you trim all the way down to the root.
Yeah, well, a lot of times they'll start a new branch near the base of it, so don't cut that new one off, but you know, get rid of the old one so that new ones can come up and fill that gap again.
When you trim the shape of it, not to get too tall, you just cut the top leaves off.
You can. I mean, you can, you know, if you trim these, they'll branch out right now. So a lot of nurseries, they like to trim them so they make round bushes. So you buy these things that are this tall and this wide.
Is that better?
I don't think so. I'd rather let them grow like they're supposed to, which is 5 foot high and 5 foot, you know, just let them grow, don't keep cutting them. It is, to me, it's still real impressive when this thing fruits. When this single branch, it's just really neat looking to see that string of berries going like that.
So we're looking for the really woody
Yeah,
stems.
the woody stems start developing a bark almost, so you can cut those out. The younger the stem, the better they produce.
I bought a blueberry here, and then it's in a big pot about this big and this tall, and it produced maybe 5, 6 blueberries, and that's it. I use the acid mix, so I don't know what I do wrong. And I water frequently, not daily.
How's the plant look?
It's sickly. It's in the full sun.
It might have dried out on you once. I mean, that's the only time we ever have trouble, is if they dry out once, they're in big trouble, or if the soil's not acidic enough. What you can do, and I sold my bags this week, if you want to get the soil more acidic, just to make sure, I mean, all the growers use sulfate of ammonia, which used to be our typical lawn fertilizer back in the 1960s, and that really, you put, you know, like on a plant this size, maybe a tablespoon in that pot, and suddenly the thing just, boom, just explodes. gets the pH down, gets nitrogen in there. That can revive them, or else put on another form of, something else that's acid. Now, we've talked to some blueberry farmers that go to the farmers markets here, and they'll farm in the ground in California, but what they do is they add the soil sulfur. This is soil sulfur here to the soil on their farm the year before. So what happens is you put sulfur on the ground, there are bacteria in the ground that eat the sulfur and spit out hydrosulfuric acid. That's their poop, it's hydrosulfuric acid. So you put this down the year before in the right amount and you get your soil more acidic. But they also tell me they put acid into the irrigation water, which a homeowner ain't gonna do. So I would just tell you it's safer to use our acid mixed potting soil and not have to worry about all the chemicals. But this one,
Three questions. How old's the plant? What about putting coffee grounds on them? And would this be a good time of the year to, if you're not satisfied with the plants the way they are, to repot them in the acid mix?
okay, well, this is an anomaly. We'll talk about this one a little bit. I don't know how well blueberries respond to purging the soil. That is, if they're in the wrong dirt, taking it off and putting in better dirt. If you just put it into bigger pots, you can do that anytime you want. That's fine. But if they're in the wrong soil, like if you bought a blueberry somewhere else and you look at the soil, it's all bark, that's gonna potentially kill the plant. It's nice to get it off there, but I have not done that enough with blueberries to know if they respond well with that. Some plants respond, don't seem to mind at all. Some plants die when you do that. So I haven't done it, but if you do have to remove bad soil, the most gentle way is with water, and you want to put the plant at least a half a day shade for 2 weeks following that to prevent shock. Not total shade. We find when we do that, put them in total shade, they don't have enough energy to come back. They have to have some sun, but it's not all day sun to recover from the root work. Blueberries, the roots on them look like, I've got real coarse here, they look like real fine hair. They're really skinny roots on blueberries, so we sometimes hate to do too much work on them that way. I can't remember what your second question was.
The coffee grounds, but so just get a bigger pot and just transfer it in there and then put the acid mix around it.
And with any plant, if you took off half the root system, you're not gonna bother it that much. So if it's in the bad soil, you can take half of it off without doing severe damage. Anything organic you want to throw on top of the soil, it creates an acid reaction. I don't know of anything that breaks down that creates alkaline. So any kind of organic matter you want to put on top of the pot, on top of the soil, coffee grounds, anything like that is fine.
Would it be advantageous to kind of put some of these together and do like a compost tea out of it? Is that helpful at all, or not worth the effort?
I'm not a fan of compost tea. The problem with compost tea is that just the fact that you put dead stuff in water and you've got a lot of biological activity in that water, that drops the oxygen level real low. So the problem with that is potentially rotting the roots. Low oxygen in water is what causes root rot. So if you've got too much biological activity in the water, then it sounds like, when you make compost tea properly, you're supposed to aerate it with a little bubbler. Because if you put low oxygen water in a plant, you can suffocate the roots immediately, which can be a problem. Even if you store water in a big water tank outside and there's dead algae in there, that can drop the oxygen levels real low too. Now if you just sprinkle it, spritz it all over the place, it aerates itself, that helps. But yeah, I'm a little leery of that one.
Excuse me, do the roots, you mentioned how fine they were, say in a 2 or 3 year old plant, would they grow to the depth of a half barrel?
If the soil permits them to.
Okay.
So generally it's soil conditions that permit the roots to grow, it's not the depth itself, because they do need to breathe air. I'm sure in a bog they won't grow very deep, where they're native to. In boggy conditions they'll probably stay real shallow. In fact, back in the 80s, the books told us to put them in pure peat. So I dug a hole in the ground, filled it with peat moss and planted my blueberries. They looked great, and I noticed after a few years they weren't growing anymore. I started yanking on it, and it was essentially floating on an island of peat in a bog. It was still alive. I mean, it was just, the roots were just, you know, this deep in that little pond I made. But they certainly weren't getting anywhere at that point, so I took it out of there, put it back in a pot, and it was fine. But so we need something other than pure peat or pure organic matter to create good rooting conditions. So sand and peat probably fine too. We use volcanic rock and peat, which is lighter weight than sand and peat. But it's got to be something else in there that's permanent to create that airflow to the roots. Okay. Now our textbooks say they need less 0.7 pounds of nitrogen per year. It's hard to translate that out. If the plants look green and they're growing nicely, you're fine. If they start turning pale, up the fertilizer.
Susan, what would cause the leaves to turn kind of reddish color?
Not enough water will do that. Lack of fertilizer will do it too. But anytime we have a water issue at the nursery, I see them turn ugly, reddish. And I know they've been missed, and that plant may not be sellable for half a year. So, if they turn reddish or grayish, you're in trouble. You got to stay green this time of year. Yes.
How do you keep birds off of them?
That's more difficult. So you can always, like one of our friends grows their blueberries inside a chicken coop. That's one way. The other one is to make a teepee out of bird netting with a structure you can easily remove to get to your plants. At our house, we would, first thing, mostly what we do, because the berries all ripen for about a month and a half period, we'll throw the scarecrow snake on the plant. So we sell a blow-up snake that's about this big. Birds hate snakes. So you put that, drape that on there, and for 2 weeks you get no bird activity until they figure it out.
Wow.
I mean, if you keep moving around, it'll help. The scarecrow owl works for like 2 days. The falcon didn't work at all. We tried most of them to see how scary the birds were, but the snake worked the best. Now they also have that mylar tape that we sell, the bird scare tape. You stretch it horizontally across your yard. If you just hang it, it doesn't work as well. You stretch it horizontally across your yard because it's silver on one side of the tape and red on the other. And the slightest breeze at all, if this thing is stretched across your yard, flips that tape, and you see the silver and red just, 100 miles an hour just going back and forth across your yard. The motion just drives the birds nutty. And when they see that silver and red streaking back and forth like that, they use that up in Napa Valley to keep the birds off the organic farms. So that works for a while too. But eventually the birds get a lot of them. So. Most of the blueberries ripen early to mid-spring, and depends on the year. Every year is different. This year they started out pretty early, and this year was weird. We had different blueberries ripening first than other years, so we'll go over that when we go over the varieties. This is really late. This blueberry is mislabeled. We don't know what it's supposed to be. Because this thing we think it may be a northern high bush, because we got this from a company in Michigan. They were sending us Florida varieties, but then we had one that wouldn't wake up with the Florida ones. The Florida ones usually start blooming in January, sometimes even earlier than that. This thing doesn't wake up until May of each year, and we had a couple years when it barely woke up at all. 2014, 2015, we thought it died because it just wouldn't do anything. But this year we had a decent winter. Still took a long time to wake up. It's still the last blueberry we have to wake up. So we know it's got to need more of a winter. It's probably a northern bush of some sort. It's not getting pollinated by anything because nothing else blooms in late. Well, actually, if I had a mature pink lemonade, it would probably bloom at the same time. But I don't know if it'll pollinate because it's a different species. But so the berries won't get that big, but, it's nice that it makes them this time of year. So yeah, it was supposed to be a Paloma, but it's definitely mislabeled, because the other Palomas bloomed out in January. So most blueberries, April's kind of like the heavy part of their picking, April, May, and then that's the early ones, the later ones, May into June, and the real late stuff is now. So it's nice to have different varieties. Most of the regular blueberries, Southern High Bush, seem to bloom at the same time, but some of them take a lot longer to ripen.
Can you get more than one crop out of a bush?
Oh, that's a good point. So, this plant is making some blueberries now.
Yeah.
And generally, you get your heavy crop, then you get a month or two when there's nothing, and then you get a light crop the rest of the year, all the way into December. So in my backyard, I had about 7 plants this size, and you know, every morning I'd go out there and water them. In September, be a good handful out of 7 plants every day. By November, it would be a small handful. By December, it'd be like 1 or 2 berries a day off of 7 plants. But springtime, you know, it's like quarts. So, if the birds don't get them. Okay. So right now we've got about, we might have 8 varieties out. Let me list them. So the first one to ripen this year, interestingly, was Misty. And it is a fairly large berry. And large, usually they tell you how many berries fit in the cup. It's like the smallest blueberry, I'll put it down here, is Sunshine Blue. Which happens to be this one. Everything on it's smaller, the leaves are smaller, the berries are smaller, the plant's smaller. So they'll tell you that the Sunshine Blue, you get about 120 berries in a cup. Whereas Misty, you get about 80 berries in the cup, so they're bigger. That's how they tell the size. But we've seen, now, I'm not sure if the Misty we sell today is the same as the Misty that we sold in the 1980s, because in the 1980s, I would swear to you that almost every berry on my Misty was the size of a quarter. They were huge. Now they seem to be smaller, more the size of a nickel. So I don't know if it's a pollination problem or it is a different supplier. These are coming out of Oregon. The original ones we got were coming, they might have been from Oregon too. Although I know I bought stuff from Michigan for a while, and they might have been a different source or a different strain of Misties. The Misties are quite large. Star, and then Jewel.
How about the flavor?
Well, the flavor on blue, they're all good. I haven't ever eaten a bad blueberry, but there's some that are better than others. We'll go over that in a second. So South Moon and Emerald. So the most important blueberries in the South, so in Florida, Alabama, the Gulf states, the big 3 are Star, Jewel, and Emerald. They're all similar size berries, all good penny to nickel size berries, and occasionally you'll get a quarter of a size one of those. They're all equally large, 5 foot, 5 foot. So big berries, those are the 3 most important ones. South Moon, we generally consider best tasting. It doesn't seem to be as vigorous as the other 3, so it's not being grown as a commercial blueberry, but it's slightly better tasting. So most people eat South Moon will say, oh, that was pretty good. It has more aroma, it seems, than the other ones. But, you know, on one plant, if you eat a bunch, 10 berries off one plant, each one's gonna be a little different. A little different size, a little better, a little different sweetness, a little different, but in overall, South Moon wins the taste test of the ones that we can grow here. Now you have to be careful, the textbooks will tell you South Moon needs 500 hours to chill. Totally wrong, doesn't need any chill. So, all these blueberries, the last winter we had, like 2014-15, I think was the warmest winter of the last, that we've seen in like 30 years. The blueberries woke up earlier. All these woke up really early. They did not hesitate, so they just needed, a hint of winter, and then when it warms up, they get going. So none of these need any chill, any significant chill at all.
For pollination, I would need like 2 South Moons.
No, two different ones.
So I could mix a star and a South Moon,
Right.
and then they would all.
If you have two of the same, it's like, no, it's the same thing.
Okay, back.
Excuse me, how would you maintain those during that semi-dormant period? Would you still water often, and would you do any fertilizing,
Well,
or?
just make sure the ground stays moist.
Okay.
Their dormant period is rather short. Now, some of them stay evergreen. So Sunshine Blue tends to be on the evergreen side, and Misty occasionally is evergreen. South Moon definitely, the leaves turn red and fall off in the winter. Real pretty color. In my yard, I believe Jewel and Star also went dormant pretty good.
Do you fertilize when they're dormant?
No, I usually wait till they start blooming.
So fertilizing while they're blooming,
Although I
they
don't
won't
think,
drop their blossoms?
I don't think it matters that much when you fertilize, as long as you get it on there sometime. Now we rate South Moon number 1, Jewel number 2. The taste test rates Star number 2, but Star is, I don't know, it's not quite, to me it's not quite as good, but I would say 3, 4, 5, 6, but it's all your own taste tests too. I mean, some people like Sunshine Blue the best because the berries are the smallest. One gentleman told me, it mixes with my cereal better. So it depends what you like. For many years, Rogers Gardens would pick Sunshine Blue, and that's probably because it ripens later when they have more sunlight. It's too early along the coast, sometimes you don't have the sun or the heat there. So South Moon isn't grown commercially because it is more susceptible to root rot. In our soils, rarely happens. I mean, interestingly, we lose 1 or 2 blueberries a year, and it's usually South Moon that we lose. So they are a little weaker than the rest, but still, the flavor makes up for it. Okay. I have some other blueberries out there, so we do have O'Neill, Jubilee, and Pink Lemonade. So all these, the first group there we have, and plus Pink Lemonade, we do have in this size pot. This is a Pink Lemonade. So Pink Lemonade, I'll mention it right now. This is a hybrid of rabbit eye that's self-fertile. They said it'll actually make bigger berries if you have the right pollinator, but no one sells the right pollinators, so we're stuck with just what the Pink Lemonade can do by itself. Now one reason we include this, I'll just tell you the flavor is not quite as intense in the blueberries. But one good thing about it is the blueberries ripen at a red stage, or a kind of a rosy pink stage. And it takes the birds a long time to figure out that they're ripe. Because most of the other blueberries are, you know, this color first, then they go pink, then they go blue, and then the birds eat them. Well, this one, they never go blue. So you'll eat half the crop off this, or even more, before the birds figure it out that it's ripe. So it is pretty nice that way too. And plus, they fruit July and August, into August, so real late. You see the leaves are a little bit more slender too, they're not as rounded.
Your other varieties, what's the smallest varieties that you want to talk about?
All these plus the pink lemonade we have in these quarts right now for $9.
What tall do they get?
A lot of them can make it to 6 feet.
And you said this way too, already?
Yeah, when the branches fall over, they're like, it's like 8 foot across, if you let it. Yeah, we had one gentleman who used to bring us pictures of his, he had 20, I think he said he had 20 15-gallon containers of blueberries on his patio.
Wow.
And he says, this is perfect. And he kept them about 4x4. My grandkids want to come over every week and check and see if there's any blueberries on there.
What does that mean to keep it 4x4?
Pardon?
What does that
Foot,
mean?
Well, just keep, trim it to about 4 foot high and wide.
Oh,
Don't let them get too big because then they dry out too fast. Okay, so Neil, back in the 1980s and 90s, this was our #1 selling blueberry. But with the string of 5 really warm winters we had, you know, 2013 through 2017, it wouldn't fruit. It would not fruit or bloom. Now, O'Neill is from New Jersey. He's not from Florida, it's New Jersey. So it needs about 300 hours of chill, which we got this year. We got a little over 300 hours. The O'Neills did wonderful. Berries tasted great. I hate to promote it, and you know, we think we're going back into a cooler, well, we think we finished with the hot winters. We had the same thing happen in the 1980s. So the early 80s, we were throwing peaches and plums, nectarine trees away because they just wouldn't wake up. We had really hot winters, 1981, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then 86 through 90, the coldest winters I could ever remember, in the 30s every night. In Orange County, they had frost warnings on the radio every night because we were cold. So we think we're going back into one of those cycles where it was hot winters, now we're gonna experience some cold winters. So O'Neill may be fine, but I'll wait another year before we start promoting them again, yes.
Would O'Neill work well, say, in Riverside?
Oh, yeah.
You know, okay.
And how about the other varieties, are they okay if they get chill on this?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, most blueberries, they wake up when it starts warming up. So even if it's cold, they'll just stay sleepy, you know, unless you're ridiculous like in Alaska, I don't think they work. So O'Neill is from New Jersey, so the literature says this is either the farthest north, most northern southern high bush they know of, or it may be the southernmost northern high bush. So they're not quite sure what O'Neill is, but it was our best tasting blueberry, and it still is really good tasting. But a little bit chancy on the chill at the moment. Jubilee's from Mississippi. Oops.
MISSISSIPP.
And in Mississippi, it's really early blueberry. Here it's late because it doesn't get enough cold. So Miss Jubilee needs about 250 hours of chill. I'll write these down. 300 we think for O'Neill, 250. Because Jubilee missed one winter, but it's never early, it's always late, it needs the chill. That one's nice because it's a late producer, it's not early like the book says, it's kind of late. But because it usually blooms by itself, the berries don't get as big as they potentially can. Then Pink Lemonade doesn't seem to need any chill, but it does ripen July, August. That's all the blueberries we have. There's some other ones we'll be picking up this fall. We don't know if they produce here. We're getting them from Dave Olson Nursery. they say they want to check it out and see if they'll do it, because like, you know, if you go by their specs, South Moon shouldn't produce here, but it does. So we'll get some other ones, I think Baby Cakes and a few others that are being sold. I think some other nurseries are selling them currently, but we'll get some in November, end of November.
So question of fertilizing, do you do it, when do you do it? Do you need to do it, or is it just if they start to look poorly?
Well, we used to do ours with an organic fertilizer about every season in the pots.
You did, yeah, in the pots.
So far with these, we pot these up in January, fed them once with the chemical fertilizer, time release, and they still look good and still growing fast. But the next time we feed them, we'll probably go organic on them. Organic is better in the long run.
Did you say what kind to use specifically for fertilizer?
No, but I would say a fruit tree fertilizer. It's mostly the first number they need. The books, you know, well, some of our textbooks say just sulfate ammonia, which is just 2100. Well, they gotta need more than that, but if you go high nitrogen, that's pretty much, because the book says only nitrogen, but I would tell you they'll need something else too.
I have that brand in a box, I want to say the neem,
Neem seed meal?
does that work, or?
Numbers are about exactly the
Oh,
same,
okay.
612 on neem seed, that'd be fine. Might even be better than this one.
Stinky, but it works.
Okay, we haven't seen bugs on blueberries at all. They might be subject to scale that ants might bring, but we haven't seen it. It's mainly just a soil issue, a water issue, and a bird issue. Any questions on the blueberries? Okay, blackberries, raspberries, boysenberries. Of course, Orange County is, or was, the home of the boysenberry. We have a few boysenberry plants right now. So boysenberry is kind of interesting. It was a berry that failed in Northern California in the farm of Frank Boysen, and then Walter Knott asked agricultural agent which berry he should try in Orange County, and they told him to look up the Boysenberry farm up north and bring it down and try it. And he did, and it became a huge success here. So Boysenberry is still considered the best tasting blackberry, really. It's hard to beat it. The problem with it is it has no shelf life, it can't be shipped, so it's limited to pies, preserves. They said there's one farm left in California that grows these. And they probably grow from Raspberries farm. But that's it, one farm that grows boysenberry, because it's just not a very good commercial variety, but it is still considered the best tasting. So you're talking, you know, when they fruit, they make 2-inch berries, you know, real beautiful big berries. So this is a typical blackberry raspberry type growth habit. So what they do is every summer they grow these long stems that may grow 10, 12 foot long. You can clip them shorter than that. And then next spring, the spring growth will flower and have berries on the end of each side branch. And then the whole branch dies. By this time of year, this branch is dead. That's why on this blackberry plant here, these are starting to get ugly leaves, because that branch, since it's fruiting, is dying, and a new one's coming out to take its place. This system of growing, this pattern of growing, is called the floricane. So floricane means they grow the stems during the summer, fall, and the next spring those things fruit. The way they're usually trained, they'll have a support here of some sort. And after the berries are off this vine, you cut these off down low. Sometimes there's new canes starting at the base of them, but generally you cut them off as low as you can. And the new ones that are growing on the ground, then you tie them up. So this is after summer, early fall. You cut off the vines that just produce fruit. If you want to wait a little longer, then these vines that just fruited are totally dead by that time. Just clip them off, and all the vines that are on the ground, you tie them up. You can wait till winter to do that if you want, but if you want to keep your yard more tidy, you tie them up. You don't need to keep that many. They produce pretty good on just a single stem, produces good fruit, so you can space them out. Now all these plants tend to run underground,
Wait, let me ask you, how far would you space them?
about 4 feet apart, is what the book says. I mean, there's no rules there. One plant can eventually cover an entire yard if you let it. When the stems hit the ground, they can reroot and make a new plant there, but they do run underground and come up. So every spring, you kind of pull out the ones that are in the wrong spot, just pull them out of the ground. Fortunately, they don't make hundreds of them, they just make maybe dozens of them, so you can pull out the ones you don't want.
Can you grow it in a pot though?
Yes. Yeah, in my yard, I made the mistake once of growing them in the ground, they kind of ran through the yard. So pots are fine. They'll go about 5 to 10 years in a pot, a good sized pot. If you're in too small a pot, like this is too small, they tend to, yeah, this would be a good size. I have a friend who does them in 15 gallon, he gets a good crop on a 15 gallon, which is small.
You need like some kind of a trellis or something in there?
Depends on which one you're using. So a lot of these, the Boysenberry is definitely viney. Most of the other berries are stiff enough that they don't have to have a support. Now, support will keep them tight, because most of the other ones kind of just do the arching branches. The Boysenberry runs, it'll run through the yard. Now, the Boysenberries, right now we've got some that are labeled thornless and some that are labeled thorny. Now, the book says that the thorny ones make a little bigger, better tasting fruit than the thornless ones. But they all end up thorny after about 5 years. So. Seems like the thornless ones revert back to thorny and the thorny ones stay thorny.
And they all have that growth patterns though? The floricane, or is that just the boysenberry?
Well, the Boysenberry is floricane, definitely floricane.
Okay.
So, the first year that stem just grows and grows and grows, doesn't do any blooming or anything. Second year, they side branch and bloom all the way. Well, it's actually the last, they do about 6 to 8 foot of cane. So what they say in the book is if this thing is 12 foot long, generally only the last 6 feet of it will flower and fruit. So we cut them down to about 6 or 8 foot, and then the whole thing flowers and fruits. You don't have to say 12 foot of it because it's just the end 6 feet or so that produces fruit.
Is that true with the lollyberries as well?
Yes. Now, what you're supposed to do these days is don't let it grow 10 or 12 foot. But I haven't done this enough to tell you this really works. They say let it grow 3 feet, pinch it, and then it'll do that. Let it go another 2 or 3 feet, pinch it again. So it spends more energy making new stems than it does real long single ones. I don't know if I like this method, but that's the current method. Just keep pinching, force them to grow. Now I remember one time I pinched the tip off of one of my Boysenberries and it just grew one stem again, so it may not work.
Because they produce more fruit?
In theory, yes, but I don't know. I haven't seen any research saying that this is better than letting them grow a little long.
So you said you let them grow long, just to like 6 feet is long enough.
6 feet's long enough for me to clip off then. Just keep it that way. Now the Boysenberry isn't a true black. In fact, I don't think any blackberry we have is a true 100% blackberry. Most of the things that are being sold are hybrids. So Boysenberry is mostly blackberry, a little bit of raspberry. Olali is the same. Olali blackberry is mostly blackberry, a little bit of raspberry. And a lot of the raspberries have a little bit of blackberry in them, so I don't know if there's any true one or not. So Boysenberry still most people's favorite, certainly real nicely flavored. And you mentioned Olali. So that's another really good big blackberry. Now we didn't sell Olalis for like 10 years because we couldn't get the rust off the leaves. So there is a disease called rust that'll make these, just like on roses, make these small patches of yellow or orange powder on the bottom of the leaves. We thought, you can't cure it. They said you can't cure it. So every time we bring them in, they get rust and we throw them away. It's like, and our customers started telling us, it still produces good fruit. So apparently the rust that they can get on Olali is only bad if you're up north and it rains 40 inches a year. It just spreads like crazy and the plant can't do anything. So here we're not going to worry about it anymore because if you do, then you can't grow. Now there are blackberries out there that are rust free, but you know the nicest ones like Olali can get it and it doesn't seem to bother them. It's not that wet a climate, so that there's some years it may be real bad, but in general it's not killing the plants and not stopping them from producing. So, but yeah, we couldn't shake the rust on the Olali berries, but now we just don't care anymore. Now the new blackberries we're getting in, so I have a few of these left, although they look kind of peaked. This is Kiowa. And according to the book, when Kiowa is well established, it'll make a 3-inch blackberry, which is huge. We haven't seen it do it yet. We see them maybe 2 inches, same size as boysenberries. Because we have ours in a big pot, so probably in the ground you might be able to get a 3-inch blackberry on Kiowa. But our supplier showed us pictures of their 3-inch blackberries up in the Central Valley, so it can do it. So that's Kiowa.
I'm sorry, but it's red.
It goes red first.
It's red, looks red and then it
Turns black. Kiowa's from University of Arkansas, so they're doing a lot of research there. Of course, Oregon does a lot of research too. In Arkansas, they do it because most of the blackberries and stuff from the Northwest won't do well where it's extremely hot in the deep South, where they get the early heat. So they develop a lot of different varieties of blackberries there. But they found when they get finished with them, they bring them to California, they make even bigger berries. So one of the new ones that came out, so University of Arkansas worked on this one, Primark 45. Right now we just have these small plants. It's called Primark 45. We like this one a lot. It's really thorny though. It's really nasty thorns, worse than rose thorns on it. But prime is for primo cane. So the alternate way of bearing is primo cane. So what this plant does, and even this plant will do this, it'll send out these real long shoots that start flowering in August. And you'll get berries from September through the end of November.
So
They said in Arkansas, they're just medium sized. They brought to California, it was like 50% larger. So it's a pretty good sized berry, real firm. It's meant for commercial use, so it's a nice firm berry. Quite impressive plant. We do like this one a lot.
So it should grow on the fence or trellis?
Well, my friend just grew it in a 15-gallon container, and it grew 10-foot long branches. They just kind of come up straight up at first, and they just kind of arch out about like this.
Just let it hang?
No, he didn't ever train his. I I mean, you can, you know, keep it a little smaller and out of the way if you have a trellis behind it, but, you know, his was just real impressive. I mean, the stems were like this thick. Real impressive. We have a few, but they're in the shade, just outside of trellis here. But,
So when would that, if we started like that, would it be another year or two before it would do that? Before it would start
probably
to-
make some this fall. They grow pretty fast. Well, this may, unsure. Because we got some prime freedoms last year in August or September, and they did not get big enough to bear fruit that year. They will this year. So this one, we got these a month ago or 3 weeks ago. They might have time to start growing bigger canes. I don't know. We're right on the cusp where it might not. So what these primo canes do, use a different color. So they send out a branch that starts flowering about 6 foot off the ground and makes berries all the way into winter here. And next spring, they'll make berries down here. The part that didn't make berries last fall will make berries this spring. Now, these berries it makes in the fall are better. So a lot of people tell me they just cut these stems off in the winter. They don't bother with the spring crop. The spring crop's not as good. The summer fall crop, or the fall, we call it the fall crop, is the superior crop on this plant. So they just go with that. And that way it's simple every winter. You just cut them down to the ground and let them regrow. But it's a nice complement to the other berries that ripen right now, or finishing ripening right now. So the Primark, and we'll hopefully be able to get the other ones too. So there's Primark 45, and there's Prime Freedom. We know the 45 has done well. The Prime Freedom, we're not totally sure yet, because it's new, whether or not it needs a chill. We're not positive. Because Primark's, I think they said zone 10, 11 is fine. Prime Freedom, they said zone 9, so we're not quite sure on that one. Last year was our first year with it. Now, Dave Wilson Nursery decided that Primark 45 wasn't worth it for them, so this one with Prime Freedom, but again, we haven't seen it perform yet, because it's new, so we'll find out on that one. We'll probably get some plants in. The grower says they'll be ready to sell them to us next month, so probably get them by September. We'll have them ready for sale. But that's the thornless version. It's supposed to be the thornless version of the Primark 45. So they have another one too called Prime Traveler, but that one definitely is in zone 8, so we'll probably not pick that one up.
Could you plant 2 of those in a container this side?
You could, the one plant will just explode though, you would have to. Now with the Blackberries, I've tried growing different varieties in the same pot. One of them usually kills the other ones. The thornier they are, the more bullyish they are. So don't put a thorny one next to a thornless one.
What type of soil?
Oh, acid mix.
for this?
We use the acid mix. Now, a lot of growers promote Triple Crown. I'll put the name on here, as being the best blackberry for this area. Thornless, big berries, heavy producer. We haven't been able to get this produced the last 5 years, so it probably needs a chill. Probably around 300 hours, because we have not seen it produce. Now, someone said theirs produced this year for the first time in a while, so maybe 300 hours of chill on Triple Crown. Because back in the 90s, Frank James, who was a local aqua expert, he says this was fantastic, but he was further back in, probably a little better chill where he was.
And give these only full sun.
Full sun, yeah. Blackberries, definitely. Blackberries, raspberries, if you don't have full sun, they never get sweet. Well, 2/3 a day. You need more than half a day of sun on blackberries. I think that's all the blackberries we sell.
What is this one?
We'll talk about that a little bit. Okay, so raspberries pretty much operate like blackberries do. We're real low on raspberries now. Now, the famous raspberry in the area is Baba. So in the when was it, 1950s, Gertrude Milliken in Idlewild, California, found some raspberry plants in the river by her house there. And her grandkids called her Baba, so they named it the Baba red raspberry. It was a floricane back in the 80s. Today it's, for some reason, they say it's the same plant, it's now a primo cane. It flowers and fruits at the end of the year and then fruits in the early part of the year. I don't know if it's the same plant or not, but they're telling us it is. So now they call it everbearing because it both has the primo cane crop in the fall and the floricane crop in the spring. It is perhaps, well, the ones I grew in the spring, the biggest raspberry fruit I'd ever grown. So size-wise, excellent. Taste-wise, I liked the San Diego Reds better, but that cultivar has gone extinct. It got, they told us, infected with the virus, no longer productive, so they got rid of them. But the San Diego Reds, which are also known as Oregon 1030s, which are also known as California red raspberries back in the 80s and 90s. Smaller berry, but heavier. To me, was better flavored. But the Baba, certainly a bigger berry. We're out of Babas for right now. Might be able to get some this summer, I don't know. We ordered them for November.
Do you ever get any other kinds?
Yes. So, I've been too lazy this year, I just haven't had time to propagate this one. This is called Rosanna. Rosanna is originally from Sicily and was taken to Minnesota because Minnesota, the floricanes never make it because they freeze to the ground every winter. But this one is a primo cane raspberry, so it makes it in Minnesota. Eunice Messner brought it to California, or at least that's what I understand, and she gave it to us back in the 80s, and we've liked it ever since. Now the berries would be bigger if it was in the ground, but they're good and they produce almost year round. So we like this one a lot.
And that's called, I'm sorry, Gary, that's
Rosanna.
How's the flavor on that?
Like any other raspberry, they're sweet, they're mild. I don't know. To me, raspberries are kind of blandish, but a lot of people love them. So you can try this one. But I was about to propagate, and I was looking at their suppliers' availability sheet, and suddenly they had this thing called Nantahala. And they told us this is the daughter of Rosanna. So I said, okay, I'm gonna try this one. So Nantahala is from, I think, I can't remember if it's North or South Carolina. One of the Carolina universities created this from Rosanna. So we'll see how it differs. So it is a primo cane. And primo canes, you know, they can produce in a few months from this size. So they don't need any winter to start production. So we're hoping this one turns out as good or better than Rosanna, so I don't have to propagate the thing. It is work to, you know, what we do is we dump out the whole thing, pull the stems apart, cut them back, replant them. Rather, I just we get these in little tiny pots, just pot them up and get them going. They're a little young yet. Truthfully, if I had my chance, druthers, I'd wait 2 more weeks to pull this out of here. But we have high hopes for Nantahala.
And these can go in a pot, or otherwise you have something for them to climb on.
They don't need support.
Okay.
The raspberries have always been pretty stiff. And when they're young, they kind of flop. But once they get their strength on, the stems just go straight up. They're spiny near the base of the stems, less spiny where the fruit's forming. But the spines aren't wicked. They're like stiff brushes versus blackberries that are hooked. These are just like, unless you really grab onto them hard, they won't break your skin.
When you say when the fruit on these mature and are ready, they just drop?
Yeah, they'll fall off the
They'll
plant
fall off.
within a couple of days, well, within a day really, that's when they're supposed to be ripe, so they don't have good hang time.
Okay.
None of the berries do, or none of the blackberries or raspberries have good hang time.
Is there a different chill requirement for the raspberries?
Well, the primo canes in theory shouldn't need any chill, in theory, because it's new growth that flowers.
Right.
So that's why, you know, even though Rosanna's from Sicily, and Sicily is more like Northern California or Oregon than here, I don't know. That's always produced well for us. So we, hopefully the Nantahala is gonna be exactly the same, at least on new growth this time. I think on this plant, this is the flora cane crop right here. So that's last year's growth that it's fruiting off of. And this is new growth from the bottom. This should start fruiting pretty soon. So apparently we got enough chill this year for it, but I haven't really watched it. You know, I've been watching it for decades, but I haven't noticed. So we usually just keep the flora cane fruit. Okay, so that's the raspberries. Now there's other ones we bring in, Caroline, which is yellow, no, Ann is yellow, fall gold, and both those are primo canes too. But I'm not positive that all the raspberries do well here in the long haul. So these are the ones we'll push.
They like to be watered from the ground, like not having leaves get wet.
Haven't heard that one. Yeah, they're, well, okay, so one of the reasons the Boysenberry does better here is because Oregon's too wet. So if we have an El Nino where this keeps raining, these get all spotted up. So they don't work. It's not a disease-resistant blackberry, and neither is Olali. So they would fail if they were in Oregon or Washington. They just won't grow there because it's too disease-prone. Here they're fine. I think the raspberries, a lot of them the same thing. We're in a good climate for these berries. The berries generally like cool springs, which we get here a lot, for the berries to reach their best quality. That's why Arkansas has to fool around with genetics to see if they get something that takes the heat better. Okay, there is a few pests that get on the blackberries and raspberries. So back in the 80s when I first started growing them, I would notice that if you look at your berries real carefully, there's little critters running around inside of them. I'm going, okay, what do I do about this? And I decided, just don't look at them. Because you can soak them in water with a little soap, and they'll kind of float to the surface sometimes, but if you still hunt them, so, and a lot of them are thrips, so we tell people, okay, spray your berries with Captain Jacks. Well, you can spray them with two things. You can spray them with an oil spray, and that kills a lot of little bugs, and you can spray them with Captain Jack's Dead Bug Brew. Both these are organic, using organic farms. This one kills thrips real well. It's supposed to kill spider mites, but generally oil does that, and in fact, both raspberries and blackberries can suffer from spider mites. So it's nice to hit them now and then anyway. We have some of the new products. I think the Dr. Earth Final Stop, which is rosemary oil, sesame oil, peppermint oil, thyme oil, cinnamon oil, and garlic oil. It's all food grade material. So it might be more pleasant to spray something like this in your garden. And that kills a lot of bugs too. In fact, the nursery industry is looking at products like this because if it's food grade, then they feel a lot better about spraying things before they ship them out. And they think because it's a mixture of essential oils, essentially, that the bugs cannot become immune, because there's so many different types of oils that are being sprayed on. So that's another product. We have another product on the shelf called Pure Crop. I forgot to bring it up here. Kind of expensive, $40 for a pint. But we're using that in the nursery mainly because they gave me a free sample. But that's corn oil and soybean oil mixed with natural soap and a few other essential oils. And we've been spraying that on a lot of things every week. and that seems to keep nursery, quite bug-free. I believe that one was made for the cannabis industry, cause they wanted something that, was okay to smoke. So,
Have you
Anyway.
tried the Dr. Earth?
yeah, we've used the Dr. Earth. I like that one too. I don't know if it kills everything, but it tends to kill, you know, they're not perfect killers, but they do lower the population of a lot of bugs and diseases. The oils also go after a lot of diseases, so that helps a lot.
And the cost wise on these three?
Well, the Dr. Earth is a little cheaper, I think, cause it's more, they manufacture more of it. So like this is a concentrate, and this will probably cover several thousand square feet for $23. That's not bad. That's not bad.
And you just put the hose on.
Right. The other product is quite expensive. Well, $40 for a pint versus 23 for a quart, so it is quite a bit more. However, that one is, I think that one is about 2 or 3 times more concentrated than this one. Anyway, so those are your good pest controls, and hopefully it keeps the amount of little bugs crawling around the berries to a minimum. Another reason why I like blueberries. Literally, they have fewer bugs in there. Okay, I think that's it on the raspberries. Okay, a couple other things I brought just because they're called
Excuse me,
berries.
Raspberry, I'm sorry, Gary. Just again, the different methods of pruning the raspberry, I mean, would you, same thing as the
Pretty much same as the
Blackberries?
blackberry.
Uh-huh.
So they'll grow, raspberries, the stems aren't quite as long, so raspberries, the floricane ones especially, will grow about 6 foot. Maybe 8 foot at the longest, but usually about 6 foot. And generally what we do in the winter is clip off the skinnier, you know, if they're too close together, we'll clip off the skinnier ones so the thicker ones have more room to make fruit. And then once they fruit, you cut them down. The primo cane stuff you can cut down every winter, just get rid of it all, and it comes back up and fruits. In fact, the Rosannas, we come down the winter, they're fruiting in the spring too on the new growth. They fruit real fast, so you don't have to wait that long on those. Okay, so I did bring out something called a Goji berry. So Goji berries are in the same family as tomatoes. They're being touted in health food stores, although I don't know that they're a whole lot different than anything else as a fruit. But it's fun because they actually do okay here, but what it is, so it's a tomato relative can live many years. The stems grow up and then they hang out, and then the ones that go sideways start blooming. They have these cute little purple flowers that within a few weeks make orange berries. There's a few here. These things were loaded a few weeks ago, but I think the birds found them, so they got stripped. But they taste kind of like halfway between a grape and raisin and a cherry tomato. So they're sweet, they're mild, they have a little bit of that cherry tomato flavor or raisin flavor. They're supposed to have a lot of good antioxidants. This one is the one that is the commercial variety in China. So they come from high altitude in China, you know, similar to, say, Colorado. The one problem we have here, if you're too close to the ocean, the mildew just messes them up really badly. Now, in our nursery this year, no mildew, so we're Fahrenheit enough. But some people get hit with mildew real bad on these, and it's hard to control it. Now, the oils are a decent way to do it. And the key on these, they don't produce an upright growth. So they say keep on chopping off all this stuff coming off the base because it's too upright. And they show in the farms in China, they just have one trunk. And everything else is just like this hanging over, and they produce well on the side branches. I don't know how long that one trunk will live, if you're supposed to replace it every once in a while or just leave it alone like that. that's the key, is that whatever is hanging off to the side flowers and fruits well, and they cycle many times a year. But I don't know how much they can produce per plant per year. I haven't seen the research on that, but this thing's all covered with flower buds. And this will be the second crop it's making this year. But I haven't found them to be as worthy as, say, a blueberry or anything else yet. We'll see. Oh, they make bigger ones, so we've tried some other varieties of this, or cultivars, and some had much bigger berries. They weren't very good. It's like the smaller ones seem to taste better. Someday some may create a bigger one that tastes really good too. And one last one we got in this recently. So this is supposed to be an important Aborigine berry from Australia called the Kunzia. Native to the coastlines of Australia. They're sand dune plants. They said they'll grow 9 foot across and about 6 inches tall. So this is a ground hugger. Now, commercially in Australia, they train them up little trellises. But ground cover on a slope, this might be a good one. So they make berries about, we saw some on some of the plants earlier, about the size of peas. Small seeds in them. They're related to, the family is guava family, myrtle family. So I think the seeds on these are small enough you can just eat them. I haven't eaten one yet. They said they taste like spicy apples. And in Australia in the old days, they were valuable enough that they would trade them as part of their trade thing. Among the Aborigines, they would mash the fruit up, dry it, and use it for trading purposes because it's very sweet, very good nutrition, stored well that way. But they claim spicy apple flavor, so not bad. Need ample water to make fruit, but the plants themselves are fairly drought tolerant. So I would say if you maybe a ground cover underneath your fruit trees might be a good one. But Kunzia.
Full sun?
Well, the sand dunes, yeah, it's pretty full sun. So full sun is best. I don't know how much shade they can take. Sun to light shade, it says on here, hardy to 25 to 30 degrees. Well-drained soil since it's coming from sand dunes. Low spreading. It says here evergreen shrubs with borders. I think they made a mistake there. It'd be an awful wide border if it goes 9 foot across. Okay. Any other questions? I think we got everything.
On the Gojis, do they need a chill factor or no? Cause I had a few smaller plants and they never did anything.
Yeah, they might. They might. They're coming from, it's hard to say because it is a tomato family plant, and generally those plants don't need chill, but it's coming from highland China, so they're getting chill in their native areas. This year they certainly produced better than last year, so it may be chill. It may be that they need some chill. Because I remember I gave up on them just a few years ago in my house. They just didn't do anything. They grew, but they didn't fruit. And that might have just been lack of chill. They actually might need a chill.
So what kind of potting soil for like the raspberries that you do in the
All our berries, we tend to use the acid mix.
the acid mix?
But the top pot's not hugely different. It just doesn't hold water quite as well.
Okay.
So
Now, where you gonna come in? Here?
this is in top pot, this one.
Go ahead.
Just so you know, we didn't grow these Kunzias, so the soil they're in is not that good. It may or may not be a factor. We don't know how sensitive this plant is. If it says well drained, that means that this plant may rot when the soil breaks down. So if you got something like this, I would say wash off half the dirt before you plant it, just to give it a better chance. Or save the seeds and plant them. As far as we know, the seeds do not need chill. I don't think that part of Australia gets any cold weather at all.
How How much are those points here?
This one is, $46. Everyone here get our emails? Okay. Yeah, we're kinda interested in that chufa, that, earth almond that we got in. That sounds pretty neat. It's a good version of a weed. Okay.
All right,
Thank you very much.
thank you, Gary.
Yeah, first 5 years of life we tend to abort a lot, and then after that everything hangs on the branch stuff. So, the only thing you can do is make sure there's enough water. That's the only thing. You can't control the weather, the humidity. All you can do is make sure the ground is wet enough.
Three times a week when they're
Too much water is not
Okay, so maybe next season, start them off.
You want to make sure the ground is moist.
Well, if they
all the
give
time.
me trouble,
Check that. If you have a stick,
shovel.
you can push in the
Yeah,
floor.
that's my favorite term. The rose wants to die? Oh, shovel.
Fertilizer, you can't, is not gonna